Today's video is of course sponsored by the absolute legends at Squarespace. Mercedes have been pretty dominant in this turbo hybrid era. I think we can all agree on that, right? 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 and 27 consecutive seasons of constructors and 7 consecutive seasons of drivers' title wins. Sebastian Vettel did manage a couple of P2 finishes in 27 and 2018 in the driver's title, but that's the closest anyone's got to toppling the Mercedes domination. Other than those 2 years, the other 5 have ended in Mercedes 1-2 in the driver's title. Hence why most people are pretty excited about the prospect of Max actually challenging this year. But now, of course, we've seen what the cars from 2022 onwards are going to look like in the flesh. I think it's safe to say a pretty mixed reception from people. I think the most contentious part is that front wing, right? It is pretty chonky, it's pretty thick. That's my biggest kind of issue aesthetically, but as long as it sorts out the racing, I'm not too arsed, to be honest. The livery that they chose to showcase it in was pretty questionable as well. They certainly didn't play it safe. It was like a bloody glitter ball. But all of the teams have put out renders of what the 2022 car looks like with their current liveries on it. And most of them, especially the Aston Martin, looks fire. Because the job of these new regulations is to make driving more equal, is to give more people the opportunity of winning a race, because it should bring the highest teams and the lowest teams closer together. Hopefully we won't see 7 seasons of constructors title wins in a row, because it will be way more competitive, and hopefully the drivers can do more of the talking. But of course, this doesn't mean F1 is becoming a spec series. Yes, they're bringing the high and the low closer together. They've got the budget cap in place, but you're still going to get teams who design a fundamentally better racing car than others. But the question is, who's going to win that race to the top of the development table, right? Because the current cars have pretty much zero correlation to the new ones we're jumping in. It's only really the engines themselves, which are going to, of course, carry over for the time being, that we can draw anything from. And the gaps between engines now, since Ferrari sorted it out, aren't really that big. But if you right now had to ask me on the 17th of July, 2021, who I think is going to be the best team over the next decade into the new era of Formula One, it's not Mercedes, it's not Red Bull, it's not even Ferrari. For me, my pick, and the title is, of course, giving it away, is Aston Martin. But why, Tommo? They're currently sat 6th in the Constructors' title. They're having a pretty meh season. They were very good last year, but those regulation changes to the floor have really hit that Mercedes-based car hard, because it's not high rake anymore. Sebastian Vettel's coming to replace Sergio Perez. Now, that was always going to be a lot to ask of Seb to match Sergio, because he was so ingrained in that team, being there so long. Seb coming off a very poor season. We know when everything's hooked up and Seb is comfortable and happy, he's one of the quickest of all time. But we haven't seen that for a while now. And alongside him is Lance Stroll, a man who will always get stick from where he came from in terms of his route into Formula One. He is very good on his day, but for me, if you ask me, the reason he's not considered a top tier driver is his lack of consistency. His good results are fantastic. He's got a few podiums for good reason, but his bad results are too bad. With the past successes of Mercedes and Ferrari and Red Bull, plus this quite kind of unknown driver lineup, why do I think this? Why do I have so much confidence in Aston Martin going forward? Well, that's the point of today's video, to go over. I've broken it down to kind of 2 main talking points as to why I've got so much belief in Aston Martin moving forward, and why I think, you know, when we look back in like 2030, we might look at a few Aston Martin constructors titles. I wouldn't be surprised. But before we get into the video, a quick minute of your time to talk about today's video sponsor, Squarespace. I've been using them for years for my website, and I couldn't recommend them more highly. Something I've been using for so long. When they approached me to sponsor my videos, I was like, I'm more than happy to do that, because I actually use the product and I know it's quality. I honestly think pretty much everyone watching is going to benefit in some way from having their own website, and Squarespace makes it super easy. Like, as much as I work on the internet now, in terms of my tech savviness, I've got no patience for technology, yet I do have patience for Squarespace, because it just makes it so easy. It's all drag and drop, all in one. Everything's there that you could possibly need. So if you're interested, go to squarespace.com and have a play around with all the functionality on offer. It doesn't cost you a penny to just have a mess around with it. It's only when you want to go fully in, put the website live to the world, that you have to pay anything. And when that time comes, use the code TOMMOF1 or give the link in the top line of the description a tap for 10% off your first website or domain. Now let's crack on with the video. That Silverstone-based team, which is what I'm going to call them for this video because they've gone through so many bloody name changes over the years, I can't be arsed. They are experts at overachieving, maximising value on the most limited resources available. The team once known as Jordan, then known as Midland, then known as Spiker, then known as Force India, then known as Racing Point, then known as Aston Martin, particularly over the last kind of 7-8 years, have consistently punched like way above their weight level. Sergio Perez achieved 7 podium finishes in that car, including that insane victory at the 2020 Sakhir Grand Prix. 7! In 2016 and 17, they finished 4th in the Constructors' title with the lowest, number 10 of 10, P10 of 10, lowest budget of any team in Formula One, according to the Beyond the Grid podcast with Andy Green. I try not to just get my information from Wikipedia. And talking of Andy Green, he is a huge, probably the biggest component of why they've been so relatively successful for so long now. He is now Aston Martin's Chief Technical Officer and has been with the team since 2010, so since their early Force India days. From a technical point of view, he is now the conductor of the orchestra. He doesn't really manufacture the components and parts himself, but it's his job to manage and make sure that everyone's pulling in the right direction. And clearly, like the success that they've had, again, with the budget that they bring, he's clearly got some very, very, very talented people around him. And then again, we need to emphasize the fact that, success and budget tend to run parallel. The more money you chuck into the sport, the more success you get. So the fact they've been able to do so much with so little is hugely impressive. It's basically the opposite of Ferrari, right? Ferrari have been consistently earning more than any other team in Formula One in terms of income and revenue from sponsors and from Formula One themselves, yet they haven't won a driver's title since 2007 or a constructor's title since 2008. And that's the beauty. With this new budget cap coming in, $145 million a year, that suits the Silverstone-based team, Aston Martin. That suits their philosophy down to a T, right? They've operated for years on a shoestring budget where you cannot afford financially to make mistakes because there's not any money. The big teams have to do much more in terms of restructuring, in terms of laying people off, in terms of changing what they've got to maximize their efficiency. Whereas, again, Aston Martin, they've already got that in place. They just need to be doing more of the same. But now, if anything, they've got a little bit more money because a certain Mr. Lawrence Stroll has come in and bought the team. And even last year, right, they made the massive decision to shift completely away from their high rate car that they'd run for most of their time in Formula One and go for a Mercedes copycat, which again, you can argue wasn't in the spirit of the sport. And was it a cheat? Was it not? I've looked into it. Look, I get that people don't think it's in the spirit of the sport, but when you actually look at what they technically got fined for, they were just using a part that a lot of other teams use other parts. It was just the FIA decided to tick that off a list. So there wasn't much in it for me. But you can't argue with the fact that they probably should have got P3 in the Constructors' title. Lance and Sergio had some very, very bad luck at times. But for me, that was the third best car last year, particularly when you consider in 2019, they finished all the way down in P7 because that's when they had to go into administration because they didn't have any money. That decision definitely paid dividends in the moment when you consider everything at the time. Obviously, now they're struggling a little bit, but I feel like they're maybe a P5. P4 is a bit too much to ask this year. Maybe a P5 in the Constructors. I wouldn't be surprised. And then there is, of course, Lawrence Stroll. We've already briefly mentioned him. But Lawrence Stroll is obviously a huge component of this team moving forward and why I believe they're going to do so well. We've had plenty of billionaire owners in the sport over the years. So what, for me, makes Lawrence different? Because again, just to go over the journey, so he bought out Aston Martin, a 25% stake with his consortium back in January 2020. Aston had posted pre-tax losses of 466 million quid last year in 2020. Pretty bad. And their share price, you can see, had been gradually falling from 2018, gradually coming down and properly bottomed out. That cash injection from Lawrence and his consortium very much did save the company, that iconic British marquee, from complete collapse. And then, of course, in 2018, he bought the Force India Formula One team, rebranded it to Racing Point, gave his son Lance a seat alongside Sergio Perez. You got to respect the fact that he came into both Aston and Force India, bought them up, and saved a lot of people a lot of jobs. Yes, you could argue another billionaire would have just come in and done the same, but maybe not. That doesn't always happen. And also, obviously, apparently, evil Saint Nick wanted to also buy Force India, which is probably a fate worse than bankruptcy, given his track record. Lawrence Stroll now sits as executive chairman of Aston Martin Lagonda and has voiced big ambition with the brand, both the road car division, the standard brand, and the Formula One team. Look, he's a motorsport man at the end of the day, and that doesn't just reflect in the fact that his son's a Formula One driver. Lawrence owns the circuit Mont-Tremblant in Quebec. He's got a ridiculous multi-million pound Ferrari collection and a bunch of McLaren F1s. Big hires and big reshuffling from the Aston Martin Formula One team implies big intent as far as I'm concerned. They've already this year hired Andrew Alessi as head of technical operations and Dan Fallows as technical director, both away from Red Bull. Fallows won't be starting until 2023 though. I do wonder if he'll get like 2 years of gardening leave. Like, imagine how sick that would be for him. He can just put his feet up for 2 years, getting paid a full wage. That's quality. I don't know if that is happening. I'm just saying, if it was, that'd be sick. Luca Fabato also comes over from Alfa Romeo to become engineering director, and they'll all be reporting into Andy Green, who's moving up to chief technical officer. I do hope that Lawrence has given Andy a nice promotion bonus with that, because I can't emphasize enough like how integral I feel that man has been to their success with no money. Like, look what they've done with no budget. Imagine what they could do with the same budget as everyone else. That's a phenomenally exciting prospect. Now, all of this positive sentiment from Lawrence Stroll, this very, very public confidence he's putting out into the world, you could argue that anyone can say words, like it doesn't necessarily going to mean anything. You could argue a lot of the other teams have expressed the same desires to get to the top. Alpine, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, even Haas. Sorry, Gunter, but I just don't see it. They're all obviously going to talk up their dedication, their application, their desire to succeed at the top of Formula One. But beyond Andy Green being amazing, Lawrence Stroll, there is obviously another key component that is very unique to his connection to Formula One, which, do I need to explain it? As Dominic Toretto would say, family. His son Lance Stroll is still only 22 years of age. He's got a lot of time left in Formula One, and I can't see him losing his seat anytime soon, because I can't see Lawrence getting out of Formula One anytime soon. I'd argue that even if the financial viability to stay in motorsport, to stay in Formula One as a team owner wasn't there anymore, he'd still probably keep it going because, well, that's his boy, innit? That's his son. That'd be like me pulling the plug on Minton because I'm not happy with his performances at Crufts. I don't know. The market machine of Formula One is a very, very, very powerful thing. I mean, look at Mercedes, for example. I think there's no doubt that their success in Formula One and aligning with Lewis Hamilton has been massive. It has changed their brand perception in this country, at least, massively. Like 10 years ago, I considered them to be like old boys' cars, Mercedes. Like nowadays, every flash in East London has got an A-Class AMG. It's just true. I think Aston Martin currently still has a similar perception to Mercedes back 10 years ago in terms of being just very traditional, very old-fashioned, not very young and relevant in the moment. But I think you can see they're already doing things, they're already putting things in place to try and change that perception. The DBX might be late to the SUV party, but considering how the Cayenne saved Porsche, I've got no doubt that will fly. It looks like a V8 Vantage took a fat off protein shake. I hate SUVs, but I like that one. Then you got Stormzy and Dave chucking it around Silverstone in a bunch of Aston Martins for their music video for Clash. Literally #1 trending music video on YouTube right now. The Newport Beach pastel collection they did in the States. Bloody gorgeous, mate. So nice in pastel. The V8 Vantage safety car, the DBX medical cars in Formula One. Like, all in all, I've been pretty impressed by the market moves they've made so far. I just hope that Aston Martin have got enough cash flow coming in to keep it going. He obviously wants to build his business interest, Lawrence Stroll. He's a very, very successful businessman for a reason. He made his money in fashion with like Tommy Hilfiger, Michael Kors, huge brands now. And I'm sure I've got no reason to doubt he wouldn't do the same here. But that's the thing to remember as well. He bought the F1 team in 2018. He didn't buy Aston until the start of 2020. Now, do I think that was a calculated decision? Buy a Formula One team, then buy a car brand, then put car brand on Formula One team? Maybe, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe he just would have bought the team anyway because he loves motorsport and he wants to help support his son, right? Whereas now what he can do, well, he owns Aston Martin anyway, so he might as well just stick the logo on the F1 team. It's kind of, in a way, it's like free advertising. I know he's bought both companies, but it would be like me sticking a pink Tommo F1 wrap on my Audi A1. Like, I own the car anyway, but I might as well then leverage it to build my YouTube channel, you know? And one final point on the drivers. Obviously, Sebastian Vettel hasn't been at his A game recently, but we know if you give him a car that he's comfortable and happy in, he's one of the best. He is truly one of the best around in the right piece of equipment. So if Aston Martin, and it looks like they're building long-term around Sebastian, if they can give him the car, the man can deliver. And again, Lance Stroll, he may not be the most consistent right now, but he's still only 22 years of age, very young. He will be given the time to improve. We've already seen a marketed improvement since he first joined the sport. I think that could be a really good lineup going forward. I'm not going to lie. So yeah, I think all of that comes together. And of course, again, you're only as successful relative to everyone else, right? I'm sure everyone's going to, put a lot of money behind it, put a lot of very, very talented people behind car development. But I don't know. I just feel that Aston Martin are onto a very, very, very good thing moving forward. And I feel pretty confident that they're going to be, right at the top. But what do you think? What team, again, in 2030, are we going to look back and think, you know what? They nailed it. Maybe I'll still be on YouTube in 2030 and we can react to this video where I'm wrong and some new team, Monster Energy, have a racing team and they're the best team on the grid. Maybe. Who knows? I can't read the future. I'm sorry. I haven't yet developed that skill. But yes, we are done. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring my stuff. Thank you for supporting the brands who support me. I do appreciate it. My name's been Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.